So let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna do some Q&A here. We have Brenda coming up with a question. Brenda, how's it going? You're on mute right now, so I can't quite hear you.
Okay, now.
Yeah, sounds good.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Now, okay, I feel alive. Working a lot. I'm working today with, I have like 3 platforms. I realized that I start my email list in GoDaddy platform with my website. So now I've been working for the past months, learning, new tools. So I work on a landing page in MailerLite. Then I learned about Honeybook because I was looking for the invoicing automatic service. And I'm looking forward to their tutorials, and I can see that they have a lot of features. So I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to do this easier so I'm not running between platforms? And if I have something already done, if I can move it from one place to another, I don't know if your experience, what can you recommend?
Let me make sure I'm clear on the problem. So you're using Honeybook for proposals and for invoicing, and what's the other use case you're trying to solve for?
Everything starts like 2 years ago with GoDaddy platform. I was using GoDaddy for the website and to have my email list. So recently, like 2 months ago, I started working with MailerLite, looking to do this landing page for the lead magnet. I have the lead magnet in the cloud. So then I was like, okay, how am I gonna do the invoicing in an effective way? So I learned with you about the Honeybook, and now I have these 3 platforms. So I'm thinking like, okay, how is the best way to work on with this with not too much hassle between platforms?
I think one common challenge is the amount of tools available for any entrepreneur. And my goal normally is to use as few as possible because it's less of a hassle, one less login, so on and so forth. But I think we're all going to have a few core tools that we use. So with Honeybook, it's great for sending out invoices, proposals. You can even use it as part of your prospecting process, where when someone fills out a form, they get a sequence of emails or prompts encouraging them to take an action. But when we're talking about email marketing, that's going to be a different platform. And it sounds like you're using MailChimp for this.
MailerLite.
MailerLite, you said?
MailerLite.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
a new.
MailChimp.
Yeah, that's a new one for me. But those are 2 completely different platforms and different use cases. So
Okay.
that more or less is what it is. But I would say if you can adopt a workflow where it's like, okay, if someone comes in through Honeybook as a prospect, but they don't actually convert, maybe you just move them onto your general newsletter list so they still get your emails.
Okay.
And there might even be some kind of integration between Honeybook, for example, and this MailerLite. I'm not sure, but I think internally you have to have a flow. Here's what happens when someone becomes a prospect. If they don't become, who I want to work with, just send them the newsletter. But you'd have to build that out. I don't know that you'd be able to make those either one of those 2 platforms do everything you're looking for.
Okay, so it can be normal, like to play with more than one platform.
Yeah. And okay. I think a lot of platforms like Honeybook, they're trying to do more. So before, I think like 6 months ago, you could not schedule calls through Honeybook, but now you can. So they're trying to add this functionality. Maybe a year from now, 6 months from now, you will be able to send emails. But right now you can't. At least not the way you're talking about it, not your use case. You can send one-off emails to individuals, but you can't do like newsletter email blasts through Honeybook.
Okay. I was wondering what I was able to do with the tool because I'm still learning about it. So because you have the experience with it, I was thinking, okay, you can give me some great advice, so I don't feel overwhelmed if it's not necessary.
Yeah, and I think the story for me, the takeaway for me is that you're using these tools to automate processes that can waste your time, energy, and talent. So I'm glad to hear
Mhm.
that because often
Yes.
that's the challenge a lot of entrepreneurs have, especially people like you. You're like, here's my zone of genius. Here's what I enjoy doing. It's not
Hmm.
setting up all these tools, but if you set up all those tools, you have more time to do what you enjoy. So
Yes.
I'm glad you're going through that process.
Yes. Thank you very much. That was my main worry for today because I'm working very a lot for this to do the launching, the official launching this month at the end of the month. So and then well, the next step, but I need to do it.
Awesome.
So thank you very much. I'm
Yeah.
learning from everything.
All right, good to hear. All right, I'm
Okay.
gonna somewhat demote you to an attendee
Okay.
and then see if anyone else wants to come up.
Hmm.
Looks like we have Kevin and Athena here, so let me just kind of do this.
Great.
But Kevin, Athena, do either one of you have questions that we can help out with in regards to growing your business, obviously? Let's see. You can just enter in the chat window, like yes or no, if you have a pointed question to share out. But while we're waiting for a response here, one thing I will say is this: I've been hiring freelancers lately, just for an agency that I'm developing, and it's been great being on the other side of the table when you're hiring a professional, as opposed to the person who's hiring their services out, because you see what it's like to be in those shoes. You see people's onboarding processes, the questions they ask, so on and so forth. And I've been blown away with some people, the way that they just make sure that, first of all, you're a good fit for them, not just they're a good fit for you, but how they make sure that they can actually deliver on the promises that they're making. So it helped me just revisit the way that I onboard people. And on my end, it's been an eye opening, but it also showed me some people aren't too great at it, and those are the ones who aren't going to be, unfortunately, super successful as we move forward, because as work and workplace have been decoupled even more, people realize, hey, I don't have to work with someone who lives in Brooklyn or Buffalo. It could be someone in Bangladesh, and then whoever is the most talented and maybe economical solution is the one that's going to win. So just keep that in mind. But I see Kevin wanted to come up and talk, but I see two people named Kevin here. So I'm gonna pick one and see see which one is correct, and we'll see what happens here. All right, so we got Kevin Yee here. Kevin, was that you that wanted to be a panelist or no? And you're on mute right now, so it's okay.
Oh yeah, so I actually had a question as
Yeah,
well.
go for it.
That piggybacks what you were talking about. So I know you're outsourcing people at the moment for your agency, but as you're outsourcing this talent, I guess I'm kind of curious from your end, what do you feel like has been the most helpful or valuable outsourcing for your agency?
Meaning the process or I mean, what they're actually doing.
The actual tasks in your business and stuff like that as well, right?
I'd say a copywriter, because a lot of stuff, like, so I'm also like, I'm hiring people to do implementation of ConvertKit, stuff like that. And that's valuable, but there's not a lot of creative talent necessary to do that. It's just like, I'm not saying just pushing buttons, but you're pushing buttons. But someone who can say, all right, let me get an idea of what your company does. What's the message you want to get across? And then create copy that supports that. That's really hard to find. And on mine, I'd say that's the most valuable part of the team that I've created so far, because I'm not going to sell anything I don't feel comfortable with, meaning I don't feel that we're going to be able to deliver great outcomes. So I've actually been hiring multiple people, multiple copywriters to test them out, and finding those people where I'm just like excited to see their content, like literally excited to see them and talk to them. These copywriters, that's been the most impactful thing. And what I've also learned though is I'm not giving people enough information sometimes to be successful. And I'll give you an example of that. So this one person, I hired them to write a lead nurturing sequence, and two nurturing emails, then one sales, then two nurturing emails, then one sales. But sure, they're going to do their research on me, my company, my competitors, but the more information I give them, the better. So what I started doing is saying, look, here's a couple articles you can reference. Like, here's some data points you can make. Here's, some other information that's out there already that you can reference in part of the nurturing series, especially. And that way they don't have to guess what's going on inside of my head because I'm already assuming what's going inside of my audience's head, right? So there's like plenty of opportunity to disconnect. And once I have an example of what success looks like, what I think looks good, I can then say, okay, how can you recreate this more or less in your own tone of voice, right? So the initial email they get for the welcome series is excitement, it's congratulatory. The next one, so on and so forth. The more guidance you give anyone, the better they're going to do. And on mine initially, I was like, oh, just read my mind and get back to me in 3 days. And that landed sometimes well, sometimes it didn't land well, but the onus is on me to properly encode what I want them to decode. Otherwise, it's not going to work out too well.
I do have a follow-up question too. Is there a process of how you identify like high priority tasks when you're outsourcing?
Yeah, I mean, I think of it this way. There's certain tasks that don't require creativity. They might require great attention to detail, but no creativity. So if I give, like, my niece is my virtual assistant, she's probably listening to this right now, actually. Like, and there's times when I ask her to put my articles on my website. That does not require any kind of creative skills whatsoever. It requires attention to detail, making sure you know how to use Squarespace, but no creativity. So for me, yes, that's important, but the talent pool of people who can do that is very large, and the amount you would pay for that is very low, right? But when I think about, again, those creative things, like someone who's writing, someone who's doing video editing, so on and so forth, that's a lot harder to find. And when you do solve that problem, you want to make sure that, first of all, you retain those people. And one thing I've been doing is saying, I'll pay you for 5, 10 of these in advance just to lock it in. And you can actually get a volume discount like that too. But that way you're saying, look, I just need to be available for this stuff. I need a 2-day turnaround, whatever it is, but just showing that you're willing to invest in them by prepaying for these services. And I think that's how I've been able to build these relationships. Cool. And that was your question. Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun. It's also respecting people and their time zone difference sometimes. So I'll ask people like, hey, it looks like it's kind of late where you're located. Do you want to talk at some other time? Or at least asking about situations. Like I used to have a video editor in the Philippines, and there's an earthquake. And I was like, hey, just checking in. Is everything okay with you and your family? Right? I mean, there's nothing I can do if there's not anything okay, but just showing like those little things where I think a lot of people that they get hired off of Fiverr or Upwork, they just get beat down. They get treated like a service provider, not a person. And if you can treat someone like a person and say, hey, look, you just got married. It's okay if you take some time. Or like, hey, I know it's the weekend, so on and so forth. You will get better results. But one thing that one of my business partners told me is this, and this was surprising because when I originally put some bids out on Upwork, I was going to pay people way too much. And I didn't know what too much was. But he was saying, he's like, that's way too much to pay for this project. And like, my goal is to make sure that people feel rewarded and recognized. And he's like, unfortunately, that's not how it works. They'll just think you're a sucker. They'll think you don't know what this stuff is worth because you're paying so much for it, and they'll take advantage of it. So that really surprised me, where it's like, I think I'm being more, giving. And I'm saying you should always be generous and respectful. But like when I was overdoing it on accident, he told me there's a downside to that. Because like, Kevin, right now, if someone offered you $10,000 to cut their yard, you could say, hell yeah, I'll cut the shrubs for another 5,000. Like, like if that's where their mind is at that point. So it was beneficial to seeing what it's like from someone who's had experience doing this stuff before me, and just leveraging that on my own as well. All right. So if there's no more questions, we can kind of make it short this week. But this has been great catching up, and I do want to revisit those tools that Brendan was asking about. Is it hard to implement these tools sometimes? It can be. I mean, just depending on your level of comfort with technology and marketing and so on and so forth. But if you could just push through that, you might be a weekend away from saving so much time by automating your email marketing, by automating the templates you're creating for your proposals, all that stuff. So yes, it will take time, but once you're done, it's done. And then you can take advantage of the compound effect, where like these small things that seem, almost insignificant sometimes, compound greatly over time and yield great results. So spend that time doing it. and push through, because there's great outcomes once you do. All right, so I'm going to take off and take care of this sick kid. But thanks for your time this week. And any questions, you can pop them into the Facebook group, or I'll catch up with you next time. So take care.